Are you confused? Don't worry if you are, because I have Gary Stevenson, former City trader, now inequality economist, on the show to explain it all. Gary, thank you so much for joining us.
Michael, thanks for having me.
To start, now, you're talking to someone with not a great deal of knowledge about the stock market. And so what I know about, hedge funds, they normally gamble on the stock market. Sometimes they win money, sometimes they lose. The same goes for retail investors. Lots of ordinary people bet on the stock market. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. On one level, that's just what's happening here. So what's special about what's been going on with GameStop this week?
Well, I mean, there's a reason it's all over the news. The scale of what's happened this week is phenomenal, right? Like you said, it's gone up 1,700% in about 2 weeks. That's an increase of 17 times. The speed and the scale is enormous, and we don't normally see things like this. It's basically taken down a massive Wall Street hedge fund. I think we need to put this in a little bit of context of what's been happening over the last year, right? Obviously, the US is in the middle of coronavirus, just like us. There's millions of people sitting at home. They can't work. They're not able to get an income. And in that period, the stock market has been flying through the roof. Amazon stock price has doubled. That's Jeff Bezos' net wealth. Tesla's up about 5 times. Bitcoin's doing whatever Bitcoin's doing. Ordinary people are sitting at home trying to work, but work's not working for them, right? They can't make any money. And they're just seeing the wealthiest people, their money in the stock market, just absolutely making tons. And this is on top of 12 years since 2008, when the stock market has gone up, I think, 5 or 6 times. So I think what you're seeing is ordinary people starting to realize that, we have a stock market that it goes up in good times and it goes up in bad times. Whatever happens, the rich seem to be protected and ordinary workers are not. So they want to get involved. I think really this is the culmination of many years of ordinary people getting left behind, of the stock market is getting bailed out when ordinary people aren't. And obviously this is the culmination of it. People getting together on Reddit and starting to, it's not even just GameStop. They're going into other things now. I think this is ordinary people. They don't want to, they want their share of the pie, basically. They see it keep going, just the stock markets, and they want to get involved.
Yes, you brought up this is, ordinary people against Wall Street. That's what we're going to discuss next. The extent to which this is a popular uprising or just a get-rich-quick plan by some people on Reddit. Before we do that, to sort of frame this discussion, I want to go to a couple of clips from CNBC. So that's the financial news channel in the United States. So the first clip I'm going to show you is from William Legate. He is founder and CEO of a cryptocurrency platform and a follower of the Wall Street Bets subreddit. He explained how he characterizes the GameStop phenomenon on CNBC.
These people are just, in general, wanting to give Wall Street the finger, quite frankly. They view the system as being rigged against them. I think that this entire movement has really validated that and made it very clear to most Americans that is the case. If I personally invested my own money and lost half of my portfolio overnight, no one on Wall Street would care at all. If a hedge fund loses half their money overnight, all of a sudden you can't trade anymore, and they stop the free market in order to allow these funds to rebalance their positions. I think that that's extremely wrong and against everything that the market's supposed to be standing for.
From your following of them, do the people in this subreddit who are calling to take down the hedge funds realize that there could be some serious unintended consequences that could hurt everyday people?
For the most part, I think absolutely. This subreddit is pretty crude, I guess you could say. And a lot of people, a big part of it, even before this Wall Street Bets movement, was posting people's losses. And that's just part of the culture of the subreddit. A lot of these people are not in this necessarily for the money. Certainly some retail traders are. And I feel like some people will end up, getting left holding the bag. But for the most part, these people are just wanting to make a statement. And they kind of view this as class warfare, quite frankly, kind of a Occupy Wall Street 2.0, but on their own turf and with real financial consequences.
So you're saying this is class warfare, but with real financial consequences. Now, someone from the ruling class who was getting pretty upset about it is a Wall Street trader, Leon Cooperman. Now, he is a hedge fund manager. He's worth $3.2 billion. Here again, he is speaking. This again is on CNBC.
The reason the market is doing what it's doing is people are sitting at home, getting the checks from the government, okay? And this fair share is a bullshit concept. It's just a way of attacking wealthy people. And, I think it's inappropriate. We all got to work together and pull together.
So the fair shares being a bullshit concept, that was about tax, I think. But he basically has the analysis that the problem here is that too many people are getting government checks, and then the plebs are investing on the stock market, and this is messing the whole thing up. Gary, I want to bring you in. I mean, they've brought up class war there. Is this a genuine sort of redistribution of wealth and power from corporate elites to the ordinary man? Is that a legitimate analysis of what's been going on over the past week?
I wish there was, Michael. It's so fascinating, isn't it? That sort of, this is the space we've reached now, where it's such an interesting combination of people are out there trying to make money in the markets, which is such a sort of individualistic, I want to make money for me idea. But they're coming together on this message board to try and do it together. It's this super combination of, I want to make money for me, and we need to do it together. I think this is, in a sense, it was kind of inevitable that we were going to reach this space, right? Because, you know, people are told that you live in a meritocracy, you have to do what you can, get a job, save up your money, buy a house. But increasingly, that doesn't work. And then at the same time, you can see people, you know, I come from a poor background. I made my money in the sea, basically gambling. And I don't know many people who come from ordinary backgrounds who've been able to, for example, buy a house just by working an ordinary job. But people see, oh, this guy's made money on Bitcoin, that guy's made money in the stock markets. So I think it's kind of reached this inevitable conclusion where people have realized that even just to achieve your basic goals, it's not working. Work isn't working. So they've tried to get together and they've tried to rebalance it, you know, on an internet messaging board. But to be honest, I don't think this is going to look fantastic for the people who made money on this. But my concern really is people are going to maybe watch this, or it's been all over the news the last couple of days. They're going to see it now. They're going to think, well, this is my chance. They're going to jump in. And, you know, at some point this stock is going to fall. And I just want to tell the people that are listening, don't take any mad risks and run into this now, because it's not easy money to be made, basically. And this is, you know, I wish the revolution could happen from people at home trading the stock markets in their underpants, but I think it's not going to go like that.
I'm not sure anyone watches Tizky South for financial advice, so you probably don't need to worry too much about that. But I do want to focus on that question actually, in terms of what is going to happen next for the people who've invested in this company, especially because presumably at this point, GameStop is overvalued. So it's worth a hell of a lot on the stock market at the moment, even though the underlying business isn't particularly valuable. And if you've got a bubble, you normally expect it to burst at some point. So that share price is going to collapse. And if you're still holding shares at that point in time, then you lose a lot. Is that inevitable now? Are we just going to inevitably see lots of Reddit users or people who've piled in because of this, you know, because of the publicity around this, lose a bunch of money? Or is there a different possible route, you know, out of this current moment than that?
I mean, this is such an interesting bubble, right? Because normally when you have a bubble, there's some people out there saying, no, it's not a bubble. It's different. This is real fundamental value. Here is a bubble. Here is a massively overvalued stock where literally everyone who's driving the bubble thinks it's overvalued. It's just everybody knows it's a bad investment. They're still doing it. And, you know, I use this message board, Wall Street Bets. Like, I've been going on it for a year. If you get some free time, have a look. It's a fascinating place. I was on it this morning. People are going, it's like a religion. People are screaming at each other, don't sell. They think they're starting a revolution, basically. So it's driven by this sort of collective madness. And I totally understand. This feeling that these guys on Wall Street are making billions. You know, Jeff Bezos is making billions. Elon Musk is making billions. We're sitting at home, we can't even work. I totally understand that sentiment. But to be honest, I cannot see this playing out any other way than it eventually collapsing. And there will be people left holding it that will lose money when that happens. I would be very, very, very surprised. And to be honest, I think even the people driving it would surely be surprised. It's the most phenomenal bubble where everybody knows it's a bubble. And but I think it's important to understand this is not coming out of nowhere, right? Last year in the COVID crisis, the government spent £450 billion, right? That's £10,000 for every adult in the country. They didn't raise any taxes. They didn't borrow money from external investors. They printed all of that money and they poured it into the system. So what you have here is a government that thinks we can deal with the crisis by printing money and giving it to the rich, because the data shows all that money ended up with the rich. Look, if you try and fix a crisis that has inequality at its core by giving money to the rich, you can't be surprised when suddenly you see massive stock market bubbles. And my big concern is that contagions into UK property. And we're seeing massive rises in UK property now. And what that will mean for young people in this country if we start seeing this bubble move into UK property, which I think quite possibly it will.
I think we should definitely let's park the UK property question for a moment, because I think we should definitely get you back on, especially particularly on that question, which might have more practical significance for a lot of people watching this. But I want to stick to this phenomenon of GameStop, and specifically now move on to the role of Robin Hood, and because Robin Hood is the app where people can trade stocks and shares without any commission. So this is the kind of app which has allowed ordinary people to trade on the stock market without having a broker or an agent. And yesterday, when this, the prices of GameStop were really surging, they suspended trading. And this was incredibly controversial. People thought this was sort of market manipulation, the big guys coming in to stop the little guy having some influence. And opposition to this suspension came from all sides of the political spectrum. So to prove that to you, the evidence, this is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She tweeted, "This is unacceptable. We now need to know more about Robinhood app's decision to block retail investors from purchasing stock while hedge funds are freely able to trade the stock as they see fit. As a member of the Financial Services Committee, I'd support a hearing if necessary." You also got someone from the right wing of the Republican Party, Ted Cruz, tweeting in agreement. So he quote tweeted that tweet I've just read to you, saying, "Fully agree." Now, Robinhood themselves, so the firm, the CEO has gone on television saying this is just because of volatile trading, meaning that they had a bit of a cash flow problem, not them intervening on behalf of any hedge funds who were losing money. Although I can see in the comments, someone has tweeted with a £10 super chat. That's Kishore Kukandraja. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. They say, "Gary, what do you think of Citadel's role in Robinhood in all of this?" And that's a reference to some people are suggesting that there could be connections between Robinhood and Citadel, who are a hedge fund who are losing money on GameStop shares because they'd short sold it, and they think that maybe there was some collusion going on here. I don't know, Gary, what do you make of this decision by the Robinhood app to suspend trading?
I mean, it's such a story, isn't it? Who would have thought, finally, the thing to unite the factual divide in the US would be the right of people to do wild, speculative gambling on the stock market. finally something that everybody can agree on. Listen, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that Robinhood head office when they decided to suspend trading. And there's lots of people with lots of ideas about what's happening. People are saying that, yeah, it's owned by Citadel, and Citadel have got powerful political connections, and they don't want Wall Street to get hurt. Listen, I can't tell you whether that's what happened. I'm sure that Robinhood themselves would say we're trying to protect investors, or we have legitimate financial reasons why we can't do it. Listen, I guarantee you there'll be people in Wall Street that are not happy about suddenly a huge amount of financial market power being held by random guys trading on Reddit. But I wouldn't be able to tell you with any certainty whether there was actually a shady meeting behind closed doors between Wall Street bankers and politicians and the guys who own Robinhood. I would love to know more, and hopefully Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will get her request for more information, because the people on Reddit are furious about it, and I can totally understand. I mean, they've got a massive position and suddenly they can't trade. If it was me, I'd be furious too. But I wish I could tell you the exact reasons that there was some shady dealings behind closed doors, but I'm afraid I don't know the truth.
I want to talk now a bit more about whether this phenomenon, which is sort of like individual retail traders, individual people in their bedrooms trading on the stock market, but talking to each other about it, could transform capitalism in some way. Now, there are lots of people discussing quite rightly that this sort of adds an element of unpredictability into the stock market, because it's not just GameStop who have gone up in value. It's lots of other brands which were seen as not having much of a future by Wall Street, and they're often brands which people have some emotional connection to. So GameStop was a shop people shopped at in their childhood, a bit like you can think of Blockbusters here. I know we have Game; it wasn't particularly meaningful to me. Also, I think Nokia's doing quite well. BlackBerry's doing quite well. There's a cinema chain in the United States that's doing quite well because people are piling in money. And one analysis is that this is sort of basically, it's kind of like financial shit posting in a way. Other people, though, are arguing that this distributed manner of investing could itself be a more efficient form of capitalism than that which is managed on Wall Street. And to introduce this point, I want to show you a video which is of the CEO of Social Capital explaining again to CNBC why he thinks that Wall Street's bet is not just an FU to the Wall Street establishment, it is also that, but that it's also the site of better investments than what hedge funds are capable of.
And I would encourage anybody who is dismissive of this thing to go into Wall Street Bets and actually just read the forums. And I think that you're going to see three kinds of posts. The first kind of content are a lot of people doing some incredible fundamental diligence on companies, trying to think about long-term value. And in my opinion, many of them are doing as good and frankly, a better job than a lot of hedge fund analysts that I work with. That's number one. The second are a lot of people who believe that, coming out of 2008, what happened was Wall Street took an enormous amount of risk and they left retail as the bag holder. And a lot of these kids were in grade school and high school when that happened. They lost their homes, their parents lost their jobs. And they've always wondered, why did those folks get bailed out for taking enormous amounts of risk and nobody helped and showed up to help my family? And then the third thing is a realization that instead of having idea dinners or, quiet whispered conversations amongst hedge funds in the Hamptons, these kids have the courage to do it transparently in a forum. And I'm not saying all of it is perfect by any means, but I think it takes an enormous amount of faith in the system to be that transparent, to talk about things, and then for each individual to make their own mind up and to do things, whether it's to buy into.
So what I found quite interesting, there was this phrase, the faith in the system, because most people are talking about this as a deeply, anti-establishment movement, potentially anti-capitalist. What that commentator there was suggesting was that potentially this could reinvigorate capitalism if you've got all of these people trading stocks in their bedrooms who can make, collectively more efficient and more transparent decisions than hedge fund managers having quiet dinners with each other. Then potentially this could be a boost to overall economic growth potentially. I mean, you're almost looking at a kind of, democratic capitalism, but of the sort of individualistic Thatcher kind in a way. I mean, what do you make of that, Gary? This idea that actually these could be more efficient investors than the Wall Street brokers. So it's not just a disruptive force, it could also be a highly efficient force.
I mean, I've spoken a lot this year about what we've seen in the last 10 years. Because governments and central banks have been trying to deal with crises, like I say, by printing huge amounts of money, we've come to this position where, as I say, if the economy does well, stock markets go up. If the economy does badly, the central bank prints a load of money and stock markets still go up. And we've really had this divergence here where whatever happens, stock markets do well and ordinary people do badly. And, I've put out videos on my Instagram and on my Facebook, Gary's Economics, explaining how people can deal with this. Because when house prices and stock prices go through the roof, but wages don't, it really, really hurts, especially young people, because they can't save up money, they can't get a house. And for this reason, I totally understand why people have surged towards online trading platforms as a easier way to access stock markets, because they want to get a share of the returns that have largely been going to the richest people, because most stocks are owned by the richest people. For that reason, especially in this last year, we've seen a massive, massive uptick in the number of people using online trading accounts like IG Index in this country, Trading 212, this kind of thing. And I think it's really important to talk about this because on the one hand, it's important that ordinary people are able to participate in these markets and take some of the returns that super rich people are getting. But the truth is, if you're super rich and you've got 1 million, 2 million, 10 million pounds, you can make loads of money on the stock markets. If you're an ordinary person sitting at home with 10, 20,000 pounds, it's going to be very difficult for you to do that. And often these people, they go onto these trading platforms. They don't really have a full idea of what they're doing. Sometimes these trading platforms can allow you to make very risky bets and people don't realize just how much risk they're taking and people can lose all of the money they put in potentially. And I think 75% of people who use this IG Index trading website lose money. So I don't want to give the impression this is some mad democratizing force because look, I'm a market professional and I've made quite a bit of money and I make money when I'm trading on stock markets. But if some guy who doesn't know what he's doing puts his life savings in there, he's probably going to be in that 75%. So I think the end result is I don't think we're going to transform capitalism and radically redistribute wealth just by everybody becoming a stock market trader, because in the end, the best stock market traders are going to end up working for the wealthiest people. And, if you're just, an electrician or a hairdresser sitting at home on the internet, you're probably not going to quadruple your money. In fact, you are likely to be in that 75%. So, it's very typical that the way the world is right now, all of this Wolf of Wall Street, the idolization of money and trading. People think, well, we can reform capitalism by all becoming traders. But I think in reality, the most likely situation is the professionals will make money, the people with the most experience will make money, and the ordinary people will be left with the losses.
Well, that's a Well, it's a downbeat note to end our coverage of this story. Jane Hayward with a $5 says, great story, great coverage, great guest. I couldn't agree more. You've been a great guest, Gary Stevenson. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We'll definitely get you back soon. If there's a housing crisis next, if the housing bubble pops, which actually maybe wouldn't be a crisis, but we'll save that conversation.
Yes, we will. Until next time. Thanks so much, Michael. Have a good day.
Nice one.